Hello.
Hiya, you're right.
Hi. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. How's your day been?
Yeah, fine. I'm so tired. Like this week is just really, really hectic. So I'm just sort of like just hit the wall today a bit. So, yeah,
I imagine it's been like a very busy week.
very, very busy. Hang on, let
Yeah.
me just, yeah, very busy week. So yeah, I'm just like I'm in my pug hoodie, ready for
Oh, I should have copied. Got mine just hung up on the door. My room's really chilly, so I'm like, oh, who knows? Maybe I'll have to put it on halfway through. Could be matching.
We can.
How have you felt in the lead up to last week? Or last
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's been good. But yeah, it's just always quite overwhelming. So
Yeah. I mean, I obviously I don't know, but I can imagine it could be. Would you say because of the sequel, did that have anything? Was that like a bigger impact? Would you say towards the previous launches, or?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question, actually. I think, I don't know. I think in some ways, yes. Because obviously there's like certain expectations, and people who really, really love the first book have been so excited. I don't know. I don't know. It's just always a bit of a roller coaster, and I'm just kind of like, just go along with it.
I mean, I've seen nothing but amazing things. So
yeah, there's been a really, really, really good reception so far. So hoping that continues. But yeah, it has been really good, really good. But yeah, it's just I forget how like so like I'm on a book a year at the moment, and I'm sort of like the 2 weeks of the week leading up to publication and publication week are just so busy, and it's like I keep thinking, right, I'm just going to try, and obviously it's right after Christmas as well, so I'm like, okay, just going to try and take it easy so I don't sort of get overwhelmed and like really overtired and everything. And I'm just like, my launch night I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go for a couple of drinks afterwards and just, you know, really try and take no. It didn't work out like that, so I'm old now, so I'm still paying for that, really.
Oh, it must be crazy leading up to it. I imagine it's kind of well, perhaps not now being so recent, but the next couple of months will be a bit of fresh air.
Yeah, there's a bit of breathing space now. Although I'm kind of on deadline for the next book, so I'm gonna sort of take. I know, very excited. I'm gonna sort of try and have like a few days now where I'm just like before half term, because then that's suddenly upon us as well. Somehow it's like we just went back to school. How is it half term already? So it's like, I know everyone always says that January is really long, but I think for me, because obviously it was build up to publication, both my birthdays were in January as well, so for me it felt like January just absolutely sped by.
It did for me as well, actually. I feel like everyone I've spoke to has been like January lasted a year, but it was probably about a week.
Yeah, it went so quickly, and I was just kind of like, oh, and then suddenly like the book was out and everything. So yeah, it just feels like probably like the last sort of 6-7 weeks have been so full on. So now I'm like, okay, let's just have a little bit of a breather, and then we can recalibrate. Oh, I can never say that word. Word I mean, and then and then start thinking about the next one, because it's always sort of go, and there's like a kind of like last year there was quite a weird period. I think it was just after I'd given in this book, and I was doing promo for last year's book, and then the first book came out in some different languages, so then I was having to do promo for the first book as well, and it was all just like I remember being on Zooms and being like, I don't know what book I'm talking about. I'm so confused. So yeah, I'm just trying to it's always a whirlwind. Like publication week is just such a whirlwind, and it just goes in such a blur as well. So it's like it's trying to get that balance between really enjoying it and really enjoying doing the events and stuff, but also sort of trying to keep my feet on the ground and be like, you know.
I imagine like grounding really comes into it, and trying to just keep yourself sane as well.
Yeah,
rested and everything, and taking care of yourself and stuff. I mean, that goes for anything, but particularly when it's such a big week.
Yeah.
But how are you feeling? How?
Yeah, good. So we've just sort of had the first week, well, not the first week. So obviously where it comes out, web paperbacks and hardbacks, they will generally come out on a Thursday, which is a weird day, but it's something to do with supermarkets. I don't really understand it all, but so we've just had the first part week sales. So book weeks go from Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah.
So we've just had the sales, in which would have been like Thursday to Sunday, which then they've been really, really good. So it's yeah, just trying to sort of manage expectations and kind of not constantly. I've had to sort of, I'm trying to take a bit of a break from Instagram as well at the moment, because it's just, again, there it's just so full on.
Second job, isn't it? Social media.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, especially when a book comes out, because it's suddenly, it's like I remember sort of waking up on the morning of publication, and I had something like 200 messages in my DMs, and I was like, oh God. They can wait till later. I do try and get back to everyone as well. So yeah, so it's yeah, it feels like it's all kind of like there's like 2 weeks of the year just so super busy.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the time it's sort of like you can like manage your time better and stuff. But
like you're just building up to the next 2 weeks, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like straight back on the treadmill, really. So yeah.
Crazy fun. Yeah, well, hi, welcome. Hello everyone who's watching. So what I should say before we get started is, if anybody would like to ask a question, if you go to the little triangle, square and circle function down the bottom, I need to check my left and right, down the bottom right of the screen, you can use the Q&A function and you can ask Katy some lovely questions there. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, but I've got some questions of my own. First of all, I want to say, so obviously our book clubs, a lot of them have been reading Murder After the Night Before.
Yeah.
Fantastic, by the way. Loved it. Not that you need to hear it, but I just wanted to, it was amazing. I think if it's all right with you, I'd love to focus more on that, but I would also love to talk about the release as well. I imagine you've been doing a lot of talking about the release this week, so it might be a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, it would be quite nice actually. But if I suddenly start talking about the new one, do remind me that.
That's all right. I'm happy to take it. I just want to say, like, to start off, what a nice kind of, I mean, I don't know how to phrase it without it being, it was like the perfect amount of feminine rage.
Yeah.
So good. I feel like that with all of your books, though. It's just like a healthy dose of rage on a weekday evening. Yeah, it's so relatable. And so, I mean, obviously, some parts potentially, hopefully not relatable.
Yeah.
But I feel like everybody that I know, every woman I know, has gone through a similar experience in terms of social media and what's been put out there and everything. And it's refreshing in a kind of jarring way about it.
Yeah.
Because it kind of brings attention that it is a universal experience. Yeah, thank you for bringing it to everybody's attention.
You're very welcome.
It was, the plot twists, the wild rides. I feel like I was constantly taken on a journey. Every time I was like, oh, I think it's this. It was then like, no, that's not it. And then it got to the end and I was like, wait. No, and the end chapter, my God. But yeah, I'll start by asking some actual questions now rather than just gushing. Yeah, so first of all, how would you describe the book to somebody who hasn't read it before?
So it is, I would say it's a kind of dark comedy / whodunit. Yeah, a dark feminist. They're really hard to describe, aren't they? It's like a dark, because it's not cozy crime, because there's nothing really cozy about it. But it's definitely a murder mystery. And I hope there's some laughs, but there's definitely that kind of, that feeling of female rage as well, sort of throughout it. So a female ragey dark comedy murder mystery, which is really catchy.
All the boxes. When you first came up with the concept, which bit came first? Because obviously you kind of go into it. I mean, it's like 2 or 3? No, I think it's like 5 chapters or something before we actually find out the murder.
Yeah.
And not even the murder. We just come across a body. So you're kind of taken on this whirlwind of it's the worst day of her life, and then oh no, hang on.
No, there's more. It gets even worse, and then even worse.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, I've wanted to, like, social media always sort of plays quite a big part in my books, because I think it's sort of, I mean, obviously it's really, really pertinent to kind of, I guess, the age range I'm writing for and about. And I've had this idea sort of in my head for quite a long time. I mean, I used to work on magazines, and this is sort of going back even sort of, I mean, probably about 20 years. I remember, so we used to sort of get the newspapers in, and we'd like go through them to see if there were any stories that we'd like to follow up on. And I remember, it's just something that's just stuck in my brain so much. This was in the days before kind of like Twitter and Instagram. I think even Facebook was just nowhere near as like prolific as it is now. But I'd come across this story, and I think it was in the Sun, and it was somebody, of course, somebody had sent in. I think because obviously this is time of sort of digital cameras were becoming, you know, everyone sort of had a digital camera, so people were taking more photos of like what was going on around them. I think like camera phones as well were just sort of becoming a thing. But someone had taken a photo of a man and a woman doing the deed in like an office block in London. And I remember it wasn't like a kind of big page spread or anything like that, but it was just kind of like a column, and it was something along the lines of, do you know this woman? And it just really, really just jarred so much, just so much about it. It was like, the guy, who cares about him? You know, it was like, do you know this woman? Because they essentially wanted to find her and slut shame her in a national newspaper. And I kind of think, I don't really know what happened with it, but I've thought about it quite a lot over the years. And I've also thought, you know, gosh, if that was in the days of Twitter, she would have been named in minutes probably. And yeah, just the whole sort of unfairness of how somebody can make, you know, a mistake. We've all made drunken mistakes. We've all, you know, not even necessarily drunken mistakes. We've all made bad decisions. And it's just the idea that your whole life can turn on just the flip of a coin, basically, because you've been caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I really wanted to work with that kind of idea. And I've had more, I was sort of thinking back to when I was younger and I was living in London, where I'd woken up after nights out and just had no idea of what had happened the night before, and how terrifying that actually is. I mean, you kind of laugh it off a bit, I think, when you're younger and when you're sort of retelling your stories to your friends, and it's like, oh. But I think obviously as I've got older and I've become sort of more aware of my own, like, mortality, I guess, you kind of look back and think, oh my God, like, there's nothing funny about being blackout drunk. There just isn't. And just, you know, there are some really unscrupulous people out there who can and will take advantage of that kind of thing. I have a daughter myself now, and I'm just like, she's just turned 12, so we're not quite there yet. But yeah, just the thought of what could potentially happen to her out there. And like, you know, when you're sort of in your 20s, you just don't think about it. You think that you're invincible. Or I certainly did anyway. You know, it was just about sort of everything was a laugh and everything was funny. But I think as you look back on it in hindsight, it's not, and it's incredibly dangerous. And then so the sort of the second element, the whole sort of murder element, actually came to me when I was listening to a really good podcast by Tortoise Media called Hidden Homicides. It's quite a short series. I think there's only about 4 episodes, and it really packs a punch. It's a difficult listen, but the premise of it is about homicides that have not been recognised as murders, and it's women who have clearly been killed by their partners, but the police have just sort of brushed it off as an accident, because it's domestic, usually because it happens in the home. There isn't a weapon. It's just easier for them to kind of dust it off as, you know, an accident in the home, and that's it. So it's kind of it focuses on the women's families and them trying to fight to prove, because they know that, you know, none of the evidence stacks up to it being an accident. In, I think there's 4 cases. It's all UK as well, and one of them is really quite terrifying because it's a guy had sort of a trail of about 4 dead partners that he'd over different parts of the country, but because the police forces were not speaking to each other, like nobody sort of pieced together that. No, and it's really harrowing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to sort of write about that idea as well, about how, you know, there are a lot of, and you know, and we don't know the true extent of these numbers. You know, it's quite scary. So I sort of really wanted to touch on, you know, the idea of these women who are being killed, and, you know, their deaths never being properly recognised as murders, and, you know, male violence. So yeah, cheery stuff all round.
The thing is, though, it's sad that it's still relatable, and sad that it's still, I mean, you see about it every day, and they're only the ones that get reported.
Exactly.
Like the crime rates are up. We're constantly drilled. I feel like going to uni, I was constantly drilled about never go to the bathroom on your own, never like leave sight of a friend, always go somewhere with a friend,
never leave a drink uncovered or by itself.
And if you can have a guy in the group. Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? And then they're amazing, like those nail varnishes that you can dip in your drinks, and like the cup covers and stuff, but it's sad that we need them. It's
really sad that we need them. And I was so my daughter's just started secondary school. This does relate. And they are introducing a rule, I think this coming September, where all of the girls, so they can't wear like the skirts that they've been wearing. They have to wear these like really big, thick kilts, because it's near on impossible, or so they think. I mean, I just think where girls wear there's will, there's way, but they're impossible to sort of roll over, so they're too short. And I'm like, why are we teaching our girls that they, at this age, at 12 years old, that they have to regulate their behavior? What you need to be teaching is the boys that they have to have self-control and not look. And I just think it's so, like, I really want to, like, I've spoken to my daughter about it, and I'm like, I really want to speak to the school, and she's kind of like, please don't. Please don't, Mum. If you could not make a big deal about it. But it's just it's those kind of like everyday, you know, this is teaching the girls and the boys that this is the world from so young, and and then that leads to things like, you know, teaching girls to cover their drinks, or to not get too drunk, or to not go out wearing short skirts when they're older. And it shouldn't be like that. The responsibility should be with the boys. And then I'm kind of like, then like going down an even darker road where I'm like, and actually, is it the 12-year-old boys, or is this because teachers or dads are uncomfortable?
Yeah.
And it's like, these are 12-year-old girls. Stop sexualizing children.
Yeah. That's the thing as well. They're not even fully grown women, and even if they were, it wouldn't matter. But it's teaching that really dangerous thinking, I think, from such a young age, that the girls are the one who have to make adaptations for the male gaze. And it sickens me, really. It further perpetuates, doesn't it, that it's always the girl's fault, because she do this, and it's like, oh well, if she was wearing bright colors, or if this and this and this, and it just further, it makes me so angry. Yeah, that's why I love the book so much. I think it's cathartic, because you just, it really is something that, like, as soon as you think about it, you start thinking more and more and more, and it just spirals, and you're just like, this is so unfair, so completely unfair. Yeah, it's just, and it, like, back to the point of the Sun article, it's only ever if it's an important man who's been caught that he's named.
He's named, exactly. Otherwise they don't. It's like, you know, with Molly in the book, it's like at no point did anyone care that actually, you know, this was a sexual assault essentially. It was just, you know, he was getting a sort of, no one even cared. It was just like to him, but you know, she was being dragged through it. Like the whole concept of slut shaming is still so prevalent and so disgusting. And it's like, you know, we've got a name for it now, which I think is good. And, you know, people do call, you know, women call it out online, but it still happens. It's still, the fact that we have to have a name for it just shows that it's still, it's still completely prevalent. And it's just so damaging to, you know, on so many levels. So
yeah, definitely. I always loved like the kind of breath of fresh air you got when it started with a tweet that was someone defending her.
Yeah, because that's nice, and it does happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, sort of show that side of things as well. But you know, the awful tweets were actually based on, you know, I kind of had gone through Twitter and sort of trawled through it, which was a really fun day, obviously, looking at like what people had said in kind of like you know, any kind, when there was like a big like rape case or sexual assault case in the news, going through it to see what had been said about the victim. And it's harrowing. It's so harrowing.
It is. I feel like it's just, it's one of those ones where it's like she says, she deletes her app, but then she goes and downloads it again, because you really can't stay away. As much as you want to not look into it, you do, because you want to find the good, and you want to find people saying these good things, but they're just completely hidden underneath all of like the complete, well, your timeline completely is, you might have 1 in 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad, very, very sad. Moving away from the sadness, so with the location, obviously it's set across London. How easy was it to set it in like Clapham? I mean, I used to live near Clapham, so reading it, I really felt like I could see where she was walking, I could see whereabouts she lived, even the little things like, oh, I was at the Sainsbury's by the train station. Sainsbury's. How easy was it to kind of plot out where all these locations took place?
I used to live in Clapham Junction myself, sort of during the period when I was sort of in my 20s and working in magazines, and so for me it was quite easy to sort of plot all that out, because you know, those are the places that, although some of them like, because so much time has passed since I lived there, it was kind of like I would have to sort of be like, oh God, is that still open? Do like no, it closed 9 years ago. Quite depressing, but so I think like all of my books, like one thing I wanted to do is try and have the locations real as possible, because I just think that, because we're talking about such serious issues, I think just having like it sort of really anchors you in where they're happening and makes them feel you know, more, I guess, like they could happen. But I like being able to sort of just go on to like Google Earth and kind of look at where my character's walking and sort of what she's seeing as she walks past and that kind of thing. So, but also it was such a big part of my life living there, but I thought it sort of made sense to set it.
Definitely. I feel like it is so nice to be able to picture where you are, and especially when it is, like you said, it anchors it to the story, and because it deals with such a real topic as well, it just adds another level to it. Where is somewhere that if you like, say you're writing a new book, where would you love to set it that isn't like London way?
So I Bet You Look Good in a Coffin, which is my latest book, is set, so it's partly in London because Kitty, the main character, is kind of like a Chelsea it girl, but about a third of the book is set in Cannes. So I got to go out there to do a research trip, which was wonderful. So the one that I'm writing now is set in LA. and I've never been, and I'm kind of like, I don't know if I've got enough time to sort of get a proper trip in before my deadline, and I'm kind of like, I really want to go. So I don't know. We've had to sort of hold the deadline off slightly because of the LA fires, because it was like we just didn't know what was happening, and because, you know, needed to know if it was going to change the landscape completely. I mean, obviously I know that there's been so it's really selfish, you know, these people have lost their homes. I'm like, but what about my book? I need to know. So yeah, we've just sort of held off. So I think that's the downside of setting things in like very real places, because, you know, we do get very real well, particularly, I don't know, I just feel like the last 5 years it's just been like one thing after another, you know. It's just
there's
like,
not been any reprieve from anything.
It hasn't, has there? It's just like, I keep seeing things on like on Instagram, people just being like, can we please have some precedented times now? That's what we'd really like.
I remember seeing it, I think it was a tweet, and it was something about, I mean, it was all those tweets. There was the Boris Johnson one, wasn't there, when it was like 2020. He's like, a great year. It's just been completely downhill since. And then what was it? It was about there was a bubonic plague every 20s, and then a major disaster every 20s or something. And someone said, do you remember when the worst thing we had to worry about was like those killer clowns in the street in like 2016? I was like, oh, take me back to 2016, please.
Glory years.
I just want a bit of boringness. I don't want any excitement.
No, I'm excited out. I'm really excited out for now. I've got, it's enough. So
it's crazy
how I
change.
really like reading like destination thrillers, and I'm like a few of my friends write thrillers that are set in like these wonderful destinations and like the Maldives and stuff, and I'm like, I'm really missing a trick. That's what I need to do.
Just book a holiday and say it's for work.
Yeah, and then it's like, it's, you know, it's tax deductible, so I might do that.
Exactly. If you could say, would you ever be interested in, I mean, I probably the answer is yes anyway, about like closed settings. So like destination things, but I feel like cruise is very done now. There's a lot of
cruise stuff, but I think the whole kind of like locked room book is so fascinating to me. Like, I love Agatha Christie. I don't know if I could do it. It feels to me kind of like you're in a place and you're just stuck with what you've got, and you can't sort of bring any, I don't know, I think it takes quite a lot of skill. Like Ruth Ware is brilliant at writing that kind of thing. I think she's incredible, and I think it's a real skill that I probably just don't have just yet. Maybe one day.
Isn't it, because it was set so long ago, you don't have to worry about all the like technology advancements.
Yeah, that's the problem. And so it's like, I think most of the destination thrillers that I've read recently, it's always like they go to this island and they haven't fully set up the Wi-Fi yet. And that's how they get around it.
Yeah,
because otherwise you'd just be like, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
There's a dead body, please, and that would be it. So yeah, I think that's a problem.
Like one boat that comes there once a week.
Yeah. But technology really is it's not a friend of crime writers.
No, it's not. And the more it develops, it's like, oh, so that goes my plot. Okay.
Yeah. So you have to, and then you have to try and think of like, because readers will pick out, like with my first book. So I mean, my first book just isn't. It's obviously not based in any kind of factuality anyway. You know, it's about a vegan serial killer who's sort of going on a rampage killing men. But like, I had quite a few people sort of comment on like Amazon and stuff, and they were like, well, what about CCTV? And I'm like, that's the one thing that you're picking up on here.
Yeah, there is so much in there, and that's what broke it for you.
Yeah, it's like, obviously this is it's pretty much a fairy tale. That's how unlikely this book is to happen. Yeah, it's the CCTV that's got you. But I mean, you know, I think that's the trouble with obviously having it set in very real places. Is so yeah.
All the vegan influencers were quaking in their boots when you oh no! Oh no!
Yeah.
They're like, okay, check the CCTV. Yeah, if so with Molly's job,
Mm.
obviously you mentioned that you worked for a magazine. If you worked for like a kids magazine, what article would you love to write?
Oh, kids magazine.
I feel like I read so much of them when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like, single thing other than that they were pink, and there was probably one.
I used to work on teenage girls magazines, which was great fun. So we used to do like lots of articles. Well, we used to do like versions of the same article pretty much every month, and it were things like how to kiss, how to make your crush on you back and stuff like this. And it was just like different way. And then there was all like things about like self-esteem. So there'd be like things like how to be your own cheerleader. I think what I quite like to write at the moment is something about like my kids are, so they're 12 and 14, and I don't understand what they're saying a lot of the time because of their slang. So I'd like to do maybe some sort of a guide for parents.
Yeah.
Decode what they're saying. Because like my daughter comes home and she's like, oh, you're so skibbity. And I'm like on my phone, what's that? So that would be quite fun.
It does just develop so quickly, doesn't it? Slang. It's so hard to keep up with. I feel like there's always a new abbreviation, and then I feel like my Google history is just clogged with what does this mean? And then I start saying it and it's completely the wrong context. And
it moves on so quickly. So I was kind of like, I remember, so 2023, I think the word of the year was Riz, and I was like, I kind of thought I had that, and I was like, right, I know what Riz is now. And then I tried to say it in a like conversation. My daughter, she's like, that's not what it means. And it's like it's evolved in the space of like maybe sort of 10 months to it doesn't mean what it meant in 2023. So parents are like desperately like, what is it now? And I just don't know. I've given up completely. But it's fascinating. I really love sort of, it's really interesting the way slang particularly develops. But yeah, it's impossible to try and keep on top of.
It's one of those things, isn't it, where I can read it in context and understand it, but I wouldn't know how to use that context myself. It's
no, like, and if I try, I just sound like such an idiot. And my daughter is like,
they have that look, don't they?
Yeah, she's really got that down to an absolute T. It's withering, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, I feel great now, thank you. With writing both Kitty and Molly, obviously they are pretty complete opposites in terms of what their story goes through. Did you have a particular favourite of which one? Did you prefer writing as the killer, or did you prefer writing as the like crime buster?
Oh, it's really hard. I sort of like I think when I'm in the book that I'm writing, I'm sort of like so in that's what I'm loving, and it's nice to kind of go from one to the other. But I found it was harder doing the murder mystery, I think, just because there's so many different elements that you have to have in there. You have to have your red herrings, and you have to have your your twists, and like a twist that isn't too obvious. And then what I really like doing, which I know annoys some people, but I don't care because I really like doing it, is like just having that extra twist right at the end. So I like having my twist, but then twisting the twist. And not everyone loves that, but you know.
It's that thing though, isn't it? It's where with plot twists, actually, I think I've written it down somewhere later on, but I'll ask it now. Do you have the twist immediately, or do you kind of develop it as you're going along?
I sort of have what I want to do in my head, but it kind of, like with every book I've written so far, it's kind of organically sort of gone its own way, just as you're sort of going through. I mean, people sort of, one of the questions I'm always asked as a writer is whether you're a planner or a pantser. I really don't like the word pantser, but we'll go with it anyway. And I think my answer always is that you have to be a bit of both. So I know some writers who will plan so intrinsically, so they just know what they're writing every single day, and they'll go in and they can just write their chapters out, and then they've done their book really quickly. And I'm like, that is brilliant. That is such dedication. I can't do that because I know that my characters are probably going to go off in tangents that I wasn't expecting them to, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, let's see what happens if we do this. And so normally the finished product it sort of bears a resemblance to what I was trying to do, but there'll normally be like a couple of other sort of twists thrown in. Usually the bad guy is never who I've originally set out to be the bad guy.
Interesting.
Which is interesting, I always think. So Coffin, the one that's out at the moment, is, and actually the first, so the How to Kill Men as well, like both of them, the kind of the big
feel like
bad.
with How to Kill Men, the bad guy and like the twist of it all is so key to the story that I couldn't imagine it being anyone else. I mean, at first I was like, who on earth is it? And that you go, oh my god. So yeah, I couldn't imagine it being anybody else.
And it was really weird, because I remember sort of when I was writing the ending, I kind of thought, oh, because it wasn't supposed to be the way it was, and I was like, oh, do you know what would be brilliant? And I sort of wrote it as that, and then sort of went over, and then realized I'd already sort of set it up for myself without realizing it. I'm like, oh, thanks for asking me, that's brilliant. That's really
helpful. A completely different way. Everyone reading it would be like, but I thought it was going to be this person.
So I think Coffin does something quite similar, because it's the person who I thought was going to be like the big bad, it just isn't. But yeah, I quite like that sort of, playing with expectations a little bit. I think that's always quite fun to do. I love it when I read a book and I'm like, if I read a twist and I'm just like, I feel like I've been slapped around the face, I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like, especially if you're the one writing it and then it comes, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, that really surprises you. So that's always good fun. So yeah, it's a bit of both, really. Yeah, I usually have a rough idea of what I want the twist to be, but it will become clear to me as I'm writing it.
Yeah, with the I also like that in How to Kill Men and Murder After the Night Before, the bad guys who end up not being the big bad, they're not good guys still.
No, they're not.
Like really rubbish people. And you still don't like them, and you still don't trust them, but it's like okay, so you're not as bad as I thought you were, but you're still pretty rubbish.
Awful, yeah.
Yeah, you're still not great. With the what was I going to say? I was going to say, I think, do you think that Molly could catch Kitty?
I think she could. I think she probably wouldn't want to.
No, I agree.
I think she'd sort of be like, let's let her get on with what she's doing.
Yeah, I agree. And we've got a couple of questions. So we've been asked, what is your writing process and how long on average does it take to get your ideas down on paper/screen?
So I'm a lot more disciplined now than I used to be, which is really good, because before I would just be chaos. So I've had to really sort of hone a writing process. So what I do now is I try and sort of write my first draft in it usually takes me about sort of 6 to 8 weeks to do my first draft. My first draft is something that I will never show anybody. It's just for me to see if it's working.
Yeah.
And it's usually a lot shorter then. So my books are sort of usually between sort of 80 and 90,000 words. My first draft will be around about sort of 60. So to get there, I try and write sort of 2,000 to 3,000 words a day, Monday to Friday. And I have become much more disciplined at this now. And what I do is I'll do like writing sprints. So I will usually get up, walk my dogs, have a cup of tea, come into, I now have a designated office.
I was going to say the bookshelf is beautiful.
Thank you. That's just my books on there. It's my vanity shelf.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a pride of place.
So what I do is I do like a 15-minute timer on my phone, like turn off all my notifications and everything, and just write for those 15 minutes. Just completely write. Don't go back over anything. If there's anything that I need to check, I'll just stick in some square brackets, knowing that I'll need to go back and fact check that later. After the 15 minutes, I'll like have a cup of tea or like play with the dogs for 10 minutes or something. Then I'll come back and do it again, and I will sort of repeat that until I've got to my workout for the day. And then rinse and repeat until I've sort of got my first draft, basically. I don't edit anything at that stage because I think
it's going to be edited later down the line.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I know a lot of writers love to perfect as they go along, and I just like, if I do that, I will never get anywhere. I'll be working on the same first sentence for so for me it's really important just to get that story down, just to get that structure down. I had to do a massive structural edit on The Murder After, which was so painful, and I swore that I would never ever put myself in that position again. So that's why I'm like much more, I have to know that that first draft is going to work. Sorry, there was two parts of that question. I've forgotten the second part.
How long does it take to put your ideas down on paper or screen?
So yeah, sort of 6 to 8 weeks to get that first draft, and then I'll spend probably about another 2 to 3 weeks tidying it up and adding more. Then I'll sort of try and put it to the side for like, I'll try and have like a bit of a break from it after that for maybe a week or two, then go back and read it to make sure, because you get so stuck in it that sometimes it's really hard to see the woods from the trees. And I really quite like giving, like, as I said, I had that painful experience with The Murder After. So I want to make sure that what I'm giving to my editor, because obviously she'll come back with notes on that first draft. But I want to make sure that what I'm giving her at that point is something that's as clean as it can be. And like, I will know by that stage if it's not working, then I need to take another approach with it. But yeah, so I am getting faster at sort of getting the whole thing down. But it's like, I'm just having to teach myself to be more disciplined, because I wasn't, as a journalist, I was just used to writing, like, I was used to working to deadlines, obviously, but it was a very short form. It's so different writing sort of something that's 90,000 words to sort of 1,000 words.
Definitely. How many drafts would you say you go through before final edit?
I think the last book only had 3, and yeah, so I think that's a good number. So it'll be the draft that I give to my editor, and that'll come back with some notes. Then I'll give it back thinking, oh, that's it, and then it'll come back again. And then by that stage, that's sort of normally it. But then it'll come back again, and it's just sort of like, at that point, it's like page proofs. So it's just like the little bits and pieces, and just like, fortunately for me, because one thing I'm not very good at is continuity. So luckily we have proofreaders and copy readers for that. So I'm like, I think with The Murder After, at one point, like, somebody had done a timeline for me, and she was like, so this takes place over about 19 weeks or something, but in you're like yesterday, and like none of it made sense when she'd sort of written it out on the timeline. So I was like, so I always do a timeline now as well. So I'm like, so I know the time frame of this book. So because otherwise it's embarrassing. You're like, I'm a professional writer and I don't even know the days of the week.
It's hard as well though, when it's got such an intricate story, and it's so about the characters and about what's happening to them, that I feel like it must be so easy for the dates to kind of fall to the wayside. I like,
kind of like the boring stuff for me. I want to get onto the nitty gritty, and it's kind of like, you've got to make sure that it still makes you just
who killed her.
That's all we care about. Who cares if it's Tuesday for 3 days in a row?
So previously you'd mentioned that for Kitty and for How to Kill Men, that it was like quite inspired by, Sex and the City, American Psycho, all fantastic pieces, and it really like comes across, especially with the twist of like being an influencer and things like that. Did you have anything like that for The Murder After?
No, I didn't really. For me, that was just much more based, as sort of I said, on those kind of ideas I had, and just one thing that I mean, it wasn't like a TV show or anything, but a story that I remember reading about quite a lot was the story of I can't remember her name, Justine. Just going to Google it. It's a good thing about having a computer, isn't it? Can't do this when I'm doing a hang on. So Justine Sacco, who had hang on, I've lost the, there we go. She tweeted, like, sort of when Twitter was sort of in its very, very early days, she'd like made a terrible joke on Twitter just as she was about to fly from the US to Africa. And by the time she got off the plane in Africa, she was like trending worldwide because she'd made this terrible joke and kind of lost her job, and you know, her life was basically ruined. And for me, it was so interesting to see how, like, there was a hashtag trending that was like something like, as Justine landed yet, 'cause she was on this long flight. And so in The Murder After, I had, you know, is Molly awake yet? And just this sort of idea that all of this can be going on and you're just completely unaware of it. Just trying to think what else. I remember when I was in the middle of writing it, and The Flight Attendant with Kaylee Kuko, the first series of that had just come out, and obviously she sort of wakes up having had a bit of a bender, and there's a dead body. It's a guy sort of in her bed that's a dead body. So I think that was kind of something that was in my mind a little bit, because I was like, I have to keep it quite different from that. But obviously it was always going to be a woman that was murdered in my book, which again was another thing that was kind of off the back of How to Kill Men, because one of the things that I usually get asked is well, not asked, but someone will normally be like, oh wow, there wouldn't be a bit called How to Kill Women and Get Away with It, would there? Like, someone always says that to me, and I'm like, oh, you're really missing the point. And it's kind of like, okay,
because that's real life.
That's real life, exactly. Like, this is fiction. That's real life. And I kind of wanted, as a sort of flip side of the whole Kitty story, really, a story of how guys do kill women and they do get away with it. Because some people I've been asked as well, you know, is there going to be a sequel to Molly? You know, is she going to go and get Jesse? And no, because he's got away with it. Someone's doing time for his crime.
It's all been cleaned. All you have is her word, and her word wasn't taken before.
Exactly. So, and that sort of, that last chapter is really kind of, you know, trying to hammer home that point of you know, men do kill women and they do get away with it.
When Josh gave her that bag, I was like, I know what's in there. No, thank you.
I know, awful. And just the sinking feeling of being like, shit.
I mean, there was that's, oh my god, I've just put it together. That's why he got the cleaners in. Wow. That just clicked. No. So it's so frustrating, but it's another aspect that really does ground it. Like, obviously there are fantastical elements that you read about, but it is very much a story that feels like it could be very real life. That would happen. I mean, the whole idea of going viral and not knowing why, like, nobody knows why you go viral. I mean, people have books about it, about this is how you do it, and it's like, but or is it just,
it's just, I think it's just such a, I think like the I mean, I did watch, I've sort of read a few books and did watch a few sort of documentaries about this, and I think it's such a, it's like a cohesion of what's going on globally and socially, and what's happened to go viral. And it's just such a, you know, an unpredictable mix that make these things happen. It's really hard to kind of, excuse me, to plan something like that.
I mean, all I could think about was, it happened not too long ago with that police officer or the jail warden, who was filmed with like some inmates or something, and that was viral. It was everywhere, and like people kept taking it down. It just kept getting posted again.
And that's the thing is, and I think, you know, that's something that happens in the murder after. It's like, even if you take away the source material, by the time you've got that far, there's already so many copies of it. It's already spread so far that you can never really, you can't claw that back. You've got no control over it. Once something like that is out there, it's out there forever. And I think, you know, dealing with that is pretty full on.
Yeah, definitely. With the whole dark web aspect, is that actually how you access the dark web?
Yes.
You Google it to like find out, or
But then I got really scared because I was like,
I was like, maybe I should try it. Oh no, I don't want to try it.
I don't actually want to go on the dark web because I don't want like the police coming around and be like, wow.
It's like Google how to access dark web. I feel like that would flag up.
That's enough. Yeah. So no, I haven't accessed it. I'm too afraid to. And also I'm just like, I've seen so many horrible like Netflix shows and stuff of like what you might find on the dark web. That I'm just like, no, I don't need to see any of that.
We see the kind of things that kind of leak through from the dark web onto the clear. I didn't even know it was called the clear web. The clear web. And I'm like, well, I don't need that. That's enough. Whatever.
I also have this thing that I'm gonna like. If I did go on there, I'd like, oh no, I've accidentally ordered a gun or something like that.
without knowing.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was like, make sure you like freeze your cards. Like, do not buy anything. And I was like, because I so would. I'd buy something by accident.
And like it happens on, you know, I'm very often accidentally ordering shoes and stuff. You don't know what, you know, I'd have like, 3 guns, a load of dogs, and like an alligator turn up or something.
Just think like half the time you hear people with these really wacky things and you're like, well, where did you get them? Like even things as simple as, is it melatonin that helps you sleep? That's not allowed over here, so you have to get it on the like a different website. I'm like, how on earth do you do that? But man, there's a will, there's a way. Like, I just brought it back from the States, and I'm like, and you didn't get checked? Like they checked that.
I'd be terrified. I'd be so scared. I was in France like in the summer, and I had quite a bad cold while I was over there, and one of the people that I was staying with like recommended this stuff called Fervex, and we don't get it over here because it's got like some, I don't know what's in it, but like stuff that we don't buy over the counter here. So when I was like going through customs with it, it's basically like Lemsip with a kick, but I was like, I was so frightened that they were going to pick up like, and I was going to end up like in the newspapers for like.
I feel like there was a cream. I can't remember what the cream was, but it was for like surgery scars, and for some reason it's like an antibiotic cream, and we don't do antibiotics over the counter. And I was like, well, everybody online is saying that I need this cream, and I have how on earth do I get this cream? So I just had to suck it up, and I was like, if only I knew about how to access the dark web before now, I would have had my surgery cream and I would have been all good. We've got a couple more audience questions. Caroline says, is there a scene or moment in the book that you are most proud of?
I really am quite proud of the grief scenes where we see Molly sort of tackling the grief, not just the grief of losing Posey, obviously, but the grief when she sort of starts coming to terms with the grief of her mum, which you know she sort of has buried and obviously like starts coming through. And I think for me, the sort of little chats that she has with her mum, I really like those. I think they're just sort of quite. They're quite emotional, and I haven't sort of reread them for a while, but when I was sort of going back through it, like when I was like doing my rewrites and stuff on it, I was a bit like, oh. I think the other scene I really liked was the one at the end where we learn that her dad's in prison.
I was just about to mention that one. Yeah, absolutely. Because at first you're kind of so angry at the beginning for being like, don't come around and and when you find out that it's not because of him and how he feels, it's the surroundings. That really touched me. I loved that scene. Also, like, good job.
Thank you. I was very proud of that one, actually. Again, that was one of those things where it was only sort of later on where I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, this would make sense. So, I didn't, like, when I'd first written it, her dad just wasn't very nice. And I was like, this just isn't, it's not doing what I need it to do. Like, I don't want him to be a horrible person. I think that's the other thing as well. I think, like, in all of my books, they're saturated with terrible men, and it's really important for me to have those good men in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Or Molly's dad, who did a terrible thing but for the right reasons. And obviously we've got Jack/John.
I was so skeptical of him the whole time. When he was like, okay, I can't get hold of you, I was like, stay away.
Dodgy guy, but a guy with a good heart. Really. But I think those are the ones. Like I think it's like, I do enjoy writing the sort of like the shocking moments and stuff, but I think it's the sort of the emotional ones. I really like the sort of flashback scenes with Posey as well, where I think one where they're putting up the Christmas tree and drinking dusty old Baileys, which
I feel like we've all had that experience. It's such a huge experience. No one's cracked it out since Christmas, but it's still there.
So it's like, I think it's like the human relationships, those are the scenes that I sort of enjoy writing the most. And I think when I go back, my computer started making really strange noise.
I think the human chapters of this like human connection, it really does shine through as like this kind of bright light in the darkness. Lifts the mood where it needs to be lifted. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in a world that is so much like ours, but it's filled with so much like, I want to say like poison, like human poison, that it is a nice reprieve. I think the grief scene that struck me the most was when she looks in the mirror and she's surprised at how she's like seeing herself for the first time and how she looks, and then she goes home and makes herself like soldiers, eggs and dippy. And then she's like, it's how our mum used to do it. It was really lovely. It was such a small moment as well, but one that I think really sticks with you.
I think sometimes those small moments can be like the most powerful. I know when I'm like, so my kind of writing inspirations are people like Marianne Keyes, and I think she does that just perfectly, those little moments. And it's like, I remember sort of reading Watermelon like when I was 18, and I can like, there's still like little bits from that book that have stuck with me for like even to today, and I'm like, that's the kind of thing I really like getting in there. It's just those little moments of connection or just humanity.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important to have that as well. Super important to have that. Beth says, will Molly and Kitty ever meet?
That would be fun. I'd love to do a sort of, I don't know, I'd like to do a kind of like sort of maybe a little novella or sort of short story where they sort of cross it. I just don't know where their paths would cross though.
I like the idea of it being like one tiny little scene where they're in like a bar.
That might be fun. I don't know if they'd go to the same places though. I feel like Kitty would be like, fuck them.
Although I've seen some faces in Clapham.
That's true.
Like on the Common. Maybe she's on one of the rooftop bars on the Common.
I'll tell you what's difficult though, is because this is a sort of insider tip about, and this is why I always think that like I love that Taylor Jenkins Reid always has her books are all in the same universe, and I think that's really good. The problem with that is when it comes to selling the TV rights.
Oh my god, I didn't even think about that.
If you've got them in the same universe and you've signed a deal that sort of encompasses that universe, then you can't sell the rights to another book to somebody else. So it is something I have to bear in mind.
Dream world. She just dreams about it.
So yeah, I don't know. I'd like to do like a sort of like maybe a kind of sort of 15,000-20,000 word story where they sort of run into each other and get drunk together, and maybe put it on my website or something like that. But it would be fun to do. I don't know if they'd be friends.
I don't know if they'd be friends either. I feel like they're very, very different.
They're so different, and I think they're just so. I think Molly would be completely intimidated by Kitty, and Kitty probably wouldn't even see Molly.
Yeah, that's true. So I went to drama school, and we had pretty much the side that were like, your Chelsea influencer type people, and then you had the other people who lived like near Clapham or in Tooting, and we were all good friends. I mean, it was a circumstance that put us together.
Well, this is quite interesting actually. So this might be a way of working something like that. So in Coffin, Kitty starts going to, so the sort of premise of this is that she's gone murder sober. So she's going to this group called Angry Women's Anonymous, where she's sort of trying to like work through her anger. And the sort of point of this including this in the book was to sort of have her cross paths with more ordinary women. That might be a way of getting in there, because Molly would definitely class as an angry woman.
I think so. I think
there we go.
Tag teaming.
I might write that. I might write that as a sort of bonus scene if I get a special edition or something.
It's so fun, just a little bonus chapter. I love that. I love the character of Molly, as she is so resilient and determined to find the killer and strongly believes in justice. I see myself in her. Which character do you feel you resemble?
Oh, of my characters, or
I think maybe both. Maybe yours and the worldwide.
Worldwide. So worldwide, I would probably be Becky Bloomwood from Shopaholic. I very strongly relate to her. And do you know what has been really good for the Shopaholic book to me is that when the first one came out, I was a similar age to Becky as she was in the first book, so I feel like I've sort of grown with her, and I find that is really interesting. So I'm really invested in those books. My characters, I don't know, I feel like I'm probably more like Molly, but I do feel like Kitty is like my shadow self. I think she's my kind of like wish fulfillment. If I was gonna, sort of, she's kind of like a Batman, isn't she? Like a Bruce Wayne kind of character, where she's got all this money and she can do whatever she wants pretty much. So yeah, she's definitely like my shadow self. But
I feel like with the film rights, you have to just make it like a Batman spin-off. It's all very dark. There's a cave, but also it's just her.
Yeah. In her Range Rover Evoque. With the bodies in the back.
Yeah. I feel like so we kind of went into it with The Murder After, but where did the kind of idea for Kitty Collins come about?
So I started my first sort of dabblings with that book were in sort of 2018, and it was very much on the back of the whole sort of Me Too thing. But in fact, no, it would have been slightly before that, because I when I was sort of thinking about it initially, I wanted it to be sort of much funnier and much lighter than what it is. And I sort of my working title for it initially was it was called Kitty the Fuckboy Slayer. And I sort of wanted her to be this, so like an almost like a Sex and the City kind of like group of friends, but instead of like, sort of drinking wine and crying and writing columns when men were terrible to her boyfriends, she was just going out and killing them basically. Sorry, her friends' boyfriends were terrible to her, her friends. Hang on, I'm not explaining that very well. You know what I mean? Yeah. But so that was sort of like the first idea, but I think it was around the sort of, and also, so it was around the time when Villanelle was very, Killing Eve had just come out. Villanelle was this huge character. Yeah. And I just thought, just having this absolutely kick-ass female who was just taking on, at first it was just supposed to be like, quite rubbish men, but then sort of the whole Me Too thing sort of came around, and I was like, okay, so there could be a much more serious message here.
Yeah.
So I sort of, I'd written probably about 2/3 of it, and then I was still working as a journalist at the time, and sort of put it to one side for a bit. And it was only like during the lockdowns in 2020 when I sort of picked it up again. And by this time, you know, lots of very dark things had happened. And I was kind of like, if she's killing these men, they have to be men that really deserve it.
Yeah.
So
because I mean, like, say what you will, she has the strongest moral code.
She has such a strong moral code. And there was a lot of kind of Dexter stuff going on there as well. Like I really loved like Dexter TV show, but also the books. And I remember like what I think is one of the most perfect taglines on a book, because it's just something that I always remember. And it's like on the first Dexter book, and it's something like serial killer with a heart, just hope it's not yours. And I just thought, oh, I love that. It's so good, you know, the serial killer with like a moral code. But I don't know, I thought I sort of had like I'm really, I don't know if you can be a fan of American Psycho. I feel like that's the wrong thing to say about it, but I
think
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think it's an extraordinary book, and also, you know, the movie is extraordinary as well. But I kind of wanted to do something along those lines. And obviously the American Psycho is very much in the 80s, and it's that sort of yuppie culture is such a huge part, and it was trying to think of what would be like a modern day equivalent. And I was just like, oh, influencers. It has to be influencers, it has to be the internet. I remember like sort of I'd spend a lot of time like scrolling through Instagram and sort of seeing like it's not, I don't get such a lot of it on my algorithm anymore, but back then there were just loads of girls and young women who were just like, they just didn't seem to have jobs apart from like Instagram was their job, and they were like always in these really far-flung places and like just looking amazing. And I just be kind of like, would it be interesting if they had a really dark story, a really dark backstory, where they've actually got like a load of bodies in their basement or something? So it was just like a sort of, you know, loads of sort of different cultural moments were sort of just pinging away. And and then I just like the whole idea of like a vegan serial killer just seemed so fun to me.
Because it's like, oh, her family own an abattoir, that's why she's
that's why she's vegan. But it's also so handy when you need to get rid of those bodies.
I would also just crossed my mind, American Psycho is the answer to how to kill women and get away with it.
Yeah.
So they're already there.
There already is. And you know, I think what I'll say as well is you can pick up so many crime books or turn on so many crime shows, and so many of them will start with a woman's dead body.
Yeah, I would say easily 70-80% of the time.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just sort of flipping that on its head, really. So, you know, both of the Kitty books that have been published so far start with, you know, a man being murdered, which was kind of like my response to that. And I think, oh, I nearly let a cat out of the bag then. I nearly let a kitty out of the bag then. If there's any more where to come, I think they would be, that would be like an ongoing.
Amazing. So I mean, this is like an early thing into, I was going to ask this at the end, but I'm really intrigued. What is the next book you're working on, and how much can you tell us about it?
Nothing at the moment. I think we'll probably be doing like a reveal quite soon, but I think sort of after the, you know, like the initial excitement of Coffin has sort of died down, we'll be doing something. But I will say that I was writing something, and my publisher has asked me to pause that and do something else. So I sort of had about half of the book done, which is just on the back burner at the moment. I think it's still going to happen, but we're just sort of slotting something else in, which is nice to know that they're, you know, they sort of want me to continue writing books. That's always good, because it's a bit like, oh, so what happens when I finish this one then?
This one's done, what next?
So exciting things. Hopefully more I'd love to write more Kitty. there won't be, I'm not going to do a Molly sequel. One thing I think I might do though is that, so when I said that I had to do a big structural rewrite, so initially it was a dual perspective book, so it was kind of like Molly in the present, Posy in the past. It just wasn't working, but I have got like pages and pages of stuff from Posy's perspective. So I think what I might do at some point, probably just on my website, or I might do like an ebook or something, is just try and do like a like Posy's diary or something. So just a sort of short, I just think it's interesting to see things from her.
Yeah, especially because you never get to meet her really, do you? Like in the present, so it'd be so nice to like see things properly from her. I mean, you get the tidbit at the end and you get from Molly's perspective of Posy, but yeah, it would be nice to see that for sure.
And it would be good as well not to, sorry, I've just got to, my daughter's just texted me.
That's all right.
I just need to reply to her asking when I'm coming downstairs. There we go. So yeah, and also I just think it would be nice to do something with that, so it's not just sort of sat on my laptop. So, yeah, possibly.
You put so much work into it already. What I can't read apparently. Read and speak aloud just doesn't work. Could you talk us through your experience of publication? I know you've spoken about it a little bit on your website, but I imagine we've got quite a lot of writers in the community, and I think they'd be really interested to hear about how you
yeah, so mine was quite it wasn't sort of a standard journey. So I started writing How to Kill Men as part of a online course with Faber, which was really good, and because I knew I wanted to write it, but I was like juggling children, work, I was just always putting it off. So it was a really good way of, you know, having someone to be accountable to, because, you know, we'd meet every week and we'd have to have a certain amount of work. So I'd never done anything like workshopping before either. So it was a really good way of yeah, just being able to make myself do it. But also meeting other people and having a sort of, it's really important, because writing obviously is such a solitary, it's so solitary, to have other people around who are doing, you know, sorry, my daughter's texting me, I'm just like,
all right.
Yeah, to have that community and people that you can sort of bounce ideas off of and get their feedback and stuff. So if anyone is thinking of doing yeah, any sort of writing course, I totally recommend it. And still, you know, still speak to people who I did that course with, still get them to read like my early stuff and things like that. So I kind of, yeah, and then as I said, I sort of picked it up again in 2020 when I finished it, and kind of got it to a place where I was happy with it, and began the agent submission cycle of hell, which was just horrible and just absolutely soul destroying. And I got, you know, and I got quite a lot of nice feedback, but I think one of the things that, you know, I always say is that it's still difficult, because even if you get the nicest rejection letter and they say the nicest things about your work, a no is still a no, and it still hurts.
Yeah.
So I kind of, I wouldn't even like to say how I was querying in 2021, and it was I think we were in just such a dark place as a planet.
Yeah,
it was just a lot of the feedback that I was getting was, it's not what we're looking for, we want upbeat stuff, and, you know, that kind of thing. And so I'd basically decided that I needed to sort of shelve it and go away and sort of do something else. So I applied to do a creative writing masters, which I did at the University of Winchester, and I started that in September 2021. just before I applied for that, I sort of, as a like a last gasp attempt at anything after all the agents' rejections, I'd sort of gone and had a look at any publishers who had, some publishers will have open submission windows. So it's usually digital publishers that do that. So, and I'd found a couple, so I sort of like sent it off, you know, we'll see. Was accepted onto the masters, and actually got a call from HQ HarperCollins on the first day of my course, basically offering me a 2-book deal. So I was straight from the publishers. But I'd actually, I had in total, I had 4 offers from publishers directly without any agent representation. So I had 2 big 5 and 2 indies had sort of said that they wanted the book. And HQ were just like, they were by far the most impressive, and they put this whole presentation together about why I should go with them, and it was just, yeah, it was really great. And then to sort of go into my master's course already with a book deal was kind of fun.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah, so it was quite, that was good. And just, you know, it's always like, I've got an agent now, but I think it's always nice to sort of tell that story, because I think so many people get stuck in like the querying trenches, and there are other ways to do it.
I think it's always important to say as well, isn't it, that plenty of amazing authors who have agent representation still don't get picked up by publishers. You go through books and books and books before you're picked up. So that's, I think that's incredible, really incredible.
1 second, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. And I get a little bit sad sometimes, because I do think, oh, there must be some amazing books out there that are just never going to see the light of day, because, you know, they're just not, the timing. And that's the other thing, you know, a lot of it is timing. When I was initially querying, this whole kind of genre wasn't really a thing, and it was only after Bella Mackey's book sort of made such a big splash that, like, more, I mean, you know, there's so many of these kind of books now, but I think that her book really opened the way. Although I was so fuming at first when it came out, because like I was querying mine when hers came out, and obviously the titles are really similar. Why?
I feel like both books, I went on holiday in, I want to say 2020, I can't even remember when it was, and both books were like, everyone on the beach had them.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to distinguish because of the titles which one they were reading. But yeah, I think, especially like with such a splashy cover as well, the covers are gorgeous.
I love the covers.
They're so pretty. How much say do you get in the covers? And the titles, actually, was How to Kill Men and Get Away with It, like the final title that you approached with?
So I wanted to call it How to Kill Men and Influence People, but they kind of talked me into this, which I think works better in the end. Titles, no, don't really get that much of a say in. I mean, if I felt really strongly about something that, you know, I could put my foot down, but I think at the end of the day, they are the experts in packaging.
Of course.
They know what they're doing, and I trust them with that. Covers, again, you know, it's just, I haven't seen a cover that I haven't liked.
Yeah.
I wasn't completely sure about the orange at first on How to Kill Men. I was a bit like, because I was kind of like, in my head, I was having this really pink book.
Yeah.
But I love it now.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. So no,
you with the blue as well.
I love the blue. The blue.
Next to the blue, they look gorgeous.
They look really good, and I just think the whole kind of like the detail on the shadow where she sort of got a knife and then a whatever those things are called, sky. But yeah, I love the. Sorry, I'm looking up here because I've got like the posters of the covers of the balls. I just love the cover of The Murder After. I think it's so striking. Yeah, so no, I wouldn't even. I mean, I do. They sort of, we play around with options, and I'll kind of say if I don't think something's working, and they'll tell me why it is working.
Yeah,
and then that's kind of how the conversation goes, really.
Just like, okay, I understand. However, with the, so you mentioned before about the Dexter tagline.
Yeah.
I would say equally, especially the Kitty Collins books have such punchy taglines on the back. How easy is it to come up with those?
I don't do those.
Oh, fair.
No, that's marketing, and my brilliant editorial team will come up with those. They do all of that sort of stuff. So
well, they're working.
It's really interesting though, because this is one of the things, like when I was doing my masters, like we would go through, putting your package together, and it was, your sort of tagline, your synopsis, and I've not found that any of those things have particularly mattered. I think so much emphasis is put on them, and actually what publishers or agents are really looking for is that voice in the writing,
because they'll take it from there, won't they?
Yeah, they'll, you'll have a team behind you that their job is to do packaging side of things, so you need to give them the product. But then saying that, I mean, you do need to put something in front of an agent or publisher that's going to catch their eye, because they just, sorry, this chair's so complicated.
It must be thousands every day.
Yeah.
Megan says Molly's complicated grief was explored throughout the murder after the night before. Was this intentional and also linked to the murder itself?
Yeah, it was definitely intentional. I was actually working through grief of one of my own friends while I was writing that book, so it ended up being like quite a cathartic experience for me. And I think sort of the peeling back of that grief, particularly with the grief for her mum, I think, sort of revealing that in little bits as we go along was definitely very intentional.
Amazing. And then Vanessa's question kind of leads into a question that I was going to ask as well, which was, so Vanessa has said, would you ever write a fantasy book? If so, I've lost it. If so, what would be your inspiration? And I was going to say, would you ever jump out of the crime genre?
I'd love to do different genres. I think I might have to do a few more of this kind of thing just to be a bit more established before I can. But I really like kind of like, possibly not fantasy, but I really like sort of speculative fiction. And I really like a lot of the stuff that I do that is not for the books, because I still sort of try and write like short stories and bits and pieces like that, but I write a lot of stuff sort of about AI and where that's kind of going. So there's a story, actually, I don't know if anyone's managed to get like the Sunday Mirror or the Sunday Express today, but I've got a short story in their magazines, and it's about a sentient I forgot what they're called, Roombas, the little a sentient Roomba, which I quite like doing. I don't know about fantasy. I think fantasy is that's where the money is. So I would love to be able to do one. I just don't know if I could. I just don't think it's something that I just don't think it's my natural voice. I think it would be really difficult for me to write something like that, because I just don't think it's my natural voice, and I'm not a fantasy reader.
It's kind of the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's just not. I'd love to be. I've just actually bought ACOTAR because I haven't read it. I'm supposed to be having surgery next week, and I've bought it I'm going to read it when I'm in hospital. I know I won't.
Oh, if only you had that American surgery cream that you can't buy in the UK.
If only. I know where to get it now, though. So
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I don't think so is probably the answer, but I do kind of like that sort of. I'm really kind of into the whole sort of like femme gore thing. Like I really love like Mona Awad, Nightbit, that kind of stuff. Probably would go more down that route with a kind of AI twist than sort of fantasy, I think. Although, which is annoying because that's where the bucks are.
But then I feel like once you kind of cross into another genre, that, I mean, a lot of your book has technology in it anyway, so I imagine it's quite a nice step into more AI work, into then like femgore with AI, and then into then potentially
fantasy. Yeah, maybe it's a sort of, maybe it's a journey that I need to go on. Yeah,
who knows. And then it's also, which genre would you say is out of your comfort zone?
Definitely fantasy. Definitely fantasy. Yeah, so out of my comfort zone, but I don't know. I think I'm seeing a lot of agents at the moment are asking for things like more contemporary fantasy. So
yeah, right now I would say.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I think urban fantasy is on the rise as well.
I just started reading, because I really like sort of folk tales and twists on fairy tales and folk tales. I've just started reading The Lamb by Lucy Rose. It's her debut. I'm not very far into it, but it's giving real like Hansel and Gretel, if like the witch had a daughter and it was written from the daughter's perspective, and it's just like, I really like, anything that's sort of folky, anything that's a little bit I can't remember the name of the author or the books now, but I was reading something a couple of years ago where the author really, they're kind of like modern takes on folk tales. So she's written about silkies, the seal women, and it's this real kind of question whether the protagonist is mentally ill or if she really is a silky. And it's just, I really like that sort of crossover. So I think it's be something along those lines, because I just really love that sort of, twisting the. I used to be, when I was younger, I was really obsessed with fairy tales, but like the dark ones, like where the sisters were cutting off their toes and stuff like that, the glass slipper. I was quite gory as a child, so I think that's where like the femgore, where my enjoyment of that comes from. But I really do like, folklore and folk tales and that kind of thing, and contemporary twists and that, I think, is
like
really interesting.
timeless about them, isn't there? Like everyone knows them. Beautiful. I love that. Anonymous says, who would you have playing Kitty or Molly in a TV or film adaptation?
I love this, because I always like, I've got a I can't say it from here, but I've got like a board where I've got like my sort of dream versions of things. So I really would like Olivia Cooke from
love Olivia Cooke.
Great. As Kitty. For Molly, I like the idea of Nicola Coughlan as Molly. I think she'd be great. Or Amy, I've forgotten her name, from Sex Education. You know who I mean. Yeah. I think she'd be great. Either of those.
I think they're fab. People will look at this interview in like 2 years' time and be like, oh my god.
That would be good.
Like a BuzzFeed interview showing Nicola Coughlan, like, look, this is what was said.
I just think she'd be such a great Molly. I think she would bring so much just depth to it. And God, why can't I remember her name?
From Sex Ed?
Yeah, is her name
Amy Lou Wood?
Amy Lou Wood, that's it. I couldn't remember if her character was Amy. But no, yes. So she's in a new series of White Lotus, and I've been watching a few sort of interviews with her this week. I used to be a TV journalist, so I still like to sort of keep my hand in a little bit with that. But I think either of those would just be be really good Mollys.
And also like really bring the humor out as well.
Yes, yeah.
Like that was one thing I actually wanted to ask. How is it adding humor to the book? Is it easier? Is it just like because I found like it's so funny. They're really funny in like a dark way, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's just that kind of like, I've always really been in sort of like dark humor and like any kind of, I just think I've just got quite a dark sense of humor. So any kind of glimmer of light in really, really dark places, I think it works, because the subject matter in these books is obviously so heavy, and I think if we took the humor out of it, they'd just be so depressing. It'd be really hard going reads, and I think having the humour in them does make them more accessible, and then them being more accessible makes, you know, it gets the conversation going. You know, we need to talk about male violence, and I think you know, it's a good way of doing that. I get quite a lot of messages from readers on Instagram who say things like that. They haven't read a book in years, and they sort of just picked it up because they saw it in Tesco's, you know, with this wonderful bright cover, and it's really made them think about things, and, you know, talk to their friends about it. And, you know, that's really why I'm doing it. Because, you know, we need to keep having those conversations.
Do you have any release day rituals?
I have a bottle of champagne that I keep in the fridge for like good news days. Although sometimes it doesn't last that long. Sometimes it's just like, sometimes it's a bad news day bottle of champagne. But I do try to have something fizzy for publication day. I don't know. I just try to like, I will have like like a couple of drinks with my friends and stuff. But I just like do try to stay quite grounded, because it's like just the whole it still feels really surreal to me. I mean, you know, I'm on my third book now, and it's still like the whole day just passes in such a sort of haze, because it's just so exciting, and I still have like real pinch me moments. Like I had lunch with my agent this publication day, and it was just like I was a bit drunk on the train home, and I was like, I'm just having lunch with my agent. So it is like, I still do have like these pinch me moments. But I sort of do try and keep it quite sort of low key, and just sort of friends and family. I know some people have like huge parties and stuff, and I'm just like, exhausting.
I think I just really quickly want to talk a little bit, like the tiniest bit about, I've got it here, like partway through. I'm so excited to carry it on. Literally what I'm going to do in a second. I think, so obviously it picks up where we left off, with a little bit further on. Is there anything you would like to say to the people watching, and to the people who will watch this as well, just about what they can expect from Kitty in Coffin?
Yes, so she is really trying, I think I said before, so she's gone murder sober, and she's given up influencing, because she's sort of realized that there's a correlation in her life between what she's seeing online and her being so full of rage and wanting to go and kill men. She's trying to stay good, because she's living with Charlie, her lovely boyfriend, who some people are very suspicious of, and I don't know why. But she's just finding that more and more things are sort of popping away at her, and there's this anonymous male sort of misogynistic influencer that is still infiltrating his way into her life, who, you know, could be based on someone real. And it's just, even though she's sort of trying to keep away from the things that were triggering her, she's still finding that the triggers are everywhere. You know, she's going to this group where she's there to sort of let out her rage with other women, but she's finding herself so triggered by their stories. And one of the stories that she hears just pushes her past the point of no return, and she's like, this man has to go. So that's sort of where we catch up with her. And then she has she sort of has a reunion with her mum in this book, which has been really nice to write. And so it's sort of, it's basically Kitty trying to find out who this, and it's like cat and mouse between her and this anonymous influencer. That's kind of all I can say really, without doing too many spoilers. There's a wonderful twist though. I really love the ending of this one. So I'd be really like interested to see what people think about that.
Amazing. I'm so excited to finish it. I bloody love Charlie.
I love Charlie.
He's just so cute. I want Charlie. I'm going to post the link to where you can buy the book, because I just think, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
There's loads. I think the sort of the kind of the feeling of female rage probably comes through more in Coffin. Particularly, I think, you know, just interested in on sort of where we are at the moment, I guess culturally, with the whole sort of idea of female rage and what's going on. You know, it's a car crash, and I think that's really touched on in that book, and I would hope that people find a good outlet for their rage, not a kitty outlet.
Like especially with January just happening,
Yes,
and everything that happened in January, it's nice and cathartic. So instead of going out and doing it, just read about it instead.
Yeah, exactly that.
So I've posted the link in the chat for everybody. With chapter 25, our members get 35% off. I bet you look good in a coffin. I believe potentially on your catalogue from HarperCollins directly as well.
Oh.
So yeah, go out, buy them up. Just buy them up.
Yeah, do
buy
it.
2 each.
I love your friends.
Fill your shelves. Have a shelf like Katie's in the background. I'm very excited to finish, and
yeah, let me know what you think of the ending.
I can't wait. We've got a comment in the chat actually that says this is my favorite one yet.
Oh, thank you. I think it's my favorite one actually. Yeah,
I'm excited to see where she goes next. I would love to see more of Kitty. And I can't wait to read whatever it is you're writing on. From what little we've got to go on.
yeah.
I'm sure I'll love it. And the one that's been shelved for now.
Yes, that will definitely be making a comeback. I'm not wasting all that work.
Yeah, no, definitely don't. But yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for writing such amazing books. And thank you so much for being here and spending your Sunday with us. It's been lovely.
Thank you.
And I hope you have the most wonderful rest of your night. And I know I will. So
thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you later. Have a good night. Thank you for coming.